Dear Anthony, so your Christmas present this year is this man. No, he's not Santa Claus, but he is the Santa Claus of audio. This is Bob Olhsson, who's been in the audio industry for 55 years? 60? 65.
No. I started in 1965.
So 54 years.
Well, I started at Motown in 65.
Right. So So Bob started his career at Motown, the Motown, in 1965, and now he lives in Nashville. And for 20 years we've worked together, and he's been teaching me stuff. And I can't learn everything. I can't fit everything in my tiny brain. I don't know how you do it.
I don't know how I do it either, but I just saw something funny. It was an interview of Shelley Yakis.
Yeah. Famous engineer.
And it's like he's come to all the same conclusions I have.
Okay.
It's hilarious. Headphones, the whole bit.
Bob and I prefer to not use headphones, and when we started doing this 20...
I never found anybody that performed as well with headphones as without.
Right.
And so it comes down to, the goal of the whole thing is to capture great performance.
Right.
And so when you got technology stepping on the performance,
right,
it's a mistake. And people get into doing stuff because they think, oh, this is how it's done. And the headphone thing is just totally off the deep end. It was never how it was done before about 1968.
Right, because the dynamics are better, your pitch is better.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, human beings make great music if you let them.
Yeah, so we started doing no headphones like 20 years ago when I got here, and people thought we were crazy. Yeah. Remember? People were like, what? Now the musicians, because we were using, Reggie Young and Ed Green and Bob Babbitt and Dave Hungate, Catherine Marks, and, they were like, oh, cool, because they started their careers this way.
Yeah.
But everybody else thought we were nuts. But now people are doing it. Now it's cool again.
Go figure.
So let's hit on some subjects. Like, that's a good one. The no headphones one is good for people to think about because it definitely, headphones affect pitch, especially for singers.
Pitch, dynamics, and phrasing.
Kind of big things. Kind of big.
Yeah.
And recently, I was having a problem just with latency and getting the mix where I could hear myself well enough, even with, software and the great DAW interface. It just wasn't working. And I remember seeing a thing about Peter, all of Peter Gabriel's great vocals, like those classic records, are no headphones. He's singing in fact, he was singing to a mix in the boom box that they were piping back into the studio, And
and at EMI they had little speakers like that. A lot of the Beatles stuff was done.
Oh. Huh.
So they just put headphones in when I visited there in '69.
Wow.
They were showing it off. Look, we just put in this thing, and they had these rolling, I guess you'd call them trolleys. I don't know. It was like a stand on wheels with spokes coming out of it. Almost looked like a merry-go-round. And they'd hang the headphones on them, and they'd wheel them into where the musicians were. And they were tickled to death because they just put in their first console that could do a headphone mix.
So I would imagine those early Beatles records that we all adore were not headphones, and thus and this is something else that's important to mention, so they probably weren't playing very loud because they had to hear themselves.
Yeah.
And yet those records just blast out of the speakers.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because you play with more dynamics, softer.
Yeah.
I mean, when you're right up pushing the edge, there's not much punch to it.
And I would even recommend this for singer-songwriters, because when Bob taught me this and I started doing records at home, I started using no headphones, right? But if you're singing and playing at the same time, you know, if you want to be heard, if you want your pitch and your articulation to be correct, you've got to play softer to have the balance be right before it even goes in the microphone when you don't have headphones.
Yeah.
And the results have been amazing, I think. I mean, I'm sure stuff's not perfect, but it makes you feel something.
Yeah. Well, it was a great discovery for me, because I mean, we had Motown put in the headphone system in '65,
Mm-hmm.
right about the time I started, and I went in the studio in '68 out of the cutting room,
Mm-hmm.
and we were just, you know, matter of factly using headphones and so forth. And I guess the first record that I did the no headphone thing on was I Just Want to Celebrate.
Mm.
I mean, the singer was just not getting into it. And so I had this Shure microphone I was testing. It was a SM53. And I said, "Oh, why don't you come here in the control room and use this mic handheld?"
Oh, so he did it handheld.
He did it handheld with the monitors up.
Wow. Well, there was probably a lot of rejection then too with the handheld.
There was some rejection, but the bleed was clean. I mean, that's the key to the whole thing, is clean bleed.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you got a bunch of room crap coming in, that's a problem. But if in this case, the loudspeakers were up pretty much normal volume. And so the bleed was just the speakers, and it just sounded like a delay on the backing track.
Right. Oh, that's cool. That's an iconic song too.
And the band got so excited they insisted on doing their two passes of backgrounds that way too.
Oh, so they did?
Yeah, they did.
Wow.
So there's a lead track and two backgrounds, and I think we may have punched a couple things in on the lead track. And
no kidding. Wow.
And there was the record.
Amazing. So yeah, one of the things I wanted to talk about was was vocals, right? Like if we could pass along to Anthony and everybody else out there, like your philosophy, what you've learned over the years. And so that's a good start, you know, is not to.
Yeah, well, that was kind of my beginning of it. And then I moved to California, and I volunteered to do music programs at a radio station, Pacifica, equivalent of WBAI. It was KPFA in Berkeley.
Okay. And
we had two Neumann mics, two old RCA 44s, and a RCA broadcast console. It actually looked a lot like Sun. Later on, when I saw Sun, it cracked me up.
Wow, okay.
So, I mean, there was no EQ, no nothing. No way to do headphones easily. And so and these few mics, so you had to do everybody on the four mics. And holy cow, we were coming out with a better sounding radio broadcast than the same people's records had been doing.
So it was just careful mic placement.
Just
You couldn't do any. You couldn't trickery and.
You couldn't. No compression. No EQ available.
Jeez.
And that completely blew my mind, because that was like a return to the 1940s recording. And
everyone was in the room together.
Yeah. Yeah, it was just a live performance. Yeah, she used to do a folk show with one Omni up in the ceiling.
Oh, wow. Well, that could do it, yeah, you know.
And that just completely turned me around. It was like, whoa, wait a minute. What is all of this? Why are we getting hung up on separation?
Right. Right.
I mean, the only thing separation is good for is fixing performance problems. But when having the ability to fix performance problems gets in the way of performance.
Right.
It's like, wait a minute.
And so I guess you found that the artists performed better in this situation, like when...
Invariably.
Yeah, less is more in the same room, no headphones.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, I understand that music today, like I was telling Bob about Billie Eilish because I'm obsessed with her and her brother's production. I think it's amazing. I think they've done a really cool end around to the business. That kind of stuff you got to do on headphones. Well, I guess, no, you could just have little monitors in your room. But, nothing beats playing live with a group. Those Beatle records, the reason they're so exciting is they were all...
The old ones were...
super exciting.
Were all live. And the beginning with Peppers, from what I understand, they would start out with a self-accompanied vocal and then stack stuff on that.
Oh. Interesting. Huh.
Because it was 4-track, so
yeah,
4 to 4 to 4 to 4.
Oh yeah,
multiple generations.
It's amazing how much better the drums sound with the Giles Martin taking off of the original tapes rather than all the dump downs. It's amazing. So yeah,
that's the good news. The bad news is that kind of the whole point of a mix is to emphasize the musical parts and hide the warts. And the problem with all these new multi-channel things is that you're mostly revealing the warts.
Right. This might have been intentional.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they didn't care. Well, that's why they approved the mono mixes but never heard the stereo ones, and the stereo ones sounded like crap later because they were done after the...
Relatively speaking, yeah.
Interesting. So what else about vocals? Is there anything else that you think's important to emphasize?
Well, always record the first take for the rundown. Because that's when a person, especially if the person's learning the song.
And they're feeling it.
And
they're just responding.
They can just do amazing things.
So then it might be important to say that if you're going to do that, make sure you keep them on whatever mic you've got them doing it on. Use that mic throughout. So if you have to fix things later, same mic, same pre.
Be at least somewhat easy, yeah.
It'll be just a little easier. Yeah. Huh. And so what else, like from, like I said, I can't fit everything you've taught me into my brain. Sometimes it comes back, and sometimes I'm like, I have the advantage I can call Bob, and
yeah. Oh, I don't remember.
Well, I don't know how you know the answer to all this stuff.
You ask a question and then that kind of,
yeah.
Oh yeah, that.
Huh. Yeah.
It's not like I sit around thinking of this stuff on my own.
But you've done a lot of it over 60
years.
I've done
a stupid amount of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you did Marvin Gaye's What's Going On vocal, that infamous...
Some of Yeah.
vocal. And that was him holding an 86?
No,
No?
not holding. No, that was on a boom.
It was on a boom, but it was a Neumann 86?
Neumann KM86, yeah.
KM86.
Because at that time, that was all we had.
Because Barry had gotten rid of the other mics or
They'd
something?
gotten rid of all the other mics.
Huh. Fascinating.
Because they wanted consistency.
Mm-hmm.
And, they wanted transistor mics
Mm-hmm.
because the tubes were a pain in the ass.
Mm.
So when they went to get transistor mics, they went for a small diaphragm, three-way,
Mm-hmm.
three-pattern
Which are great.
mics.
They're great.
And they're great. They tend to pop, and so we had to learn how to deal with pops.
How did you deal with it?
Oh, we had
Low pass?
we had some windscreens.
High passing? Windscreens?
Yeah, you can't really high pass. I mean, you can high pass pops away. I mean, that's one nice thing about digital is that you can grab just the pop and high pass it,
Mm-hmm. In Audio Suite,
and
for
you
example.
get away with it.
Yeah.
But if you had the high pass on for the whole thing, it wouldn't.
No, it sounds like crap. I've tried that.
Yeah,
It's just you're losing too much.
yeah. So you got to only do the part that got screwed up.
I remember the first time I showed somebody, and it was on a record. It was important because it was my record, and there was a pop, and I was in Norway, and I showed the engineer. He's like, "Oh man, I'll just high pass that," and I'm like, "No. I go, let me do this. I said, I'll show this to you, as long as you don't tell anybody.
Yeah.
Everybody should know. So you zoom in, the pop will look like a jagged little, very short blip. Go into Audio Suite and Pro Tools. There's Audio Suite. I'm sure you can do it in Cubase and the rest, and you just highlight that little piece. You go into Audio Suite, drop, 200 to 350 somewhere in there, and just that piece, and it doesn't affect the vocal, and it gets rid of it 98% of the time.
Yeah.
I think I've had one or two times where I had to do a little more surgery, but it's just that you want to deal with.
Yeah.
And then you're not affecting.
And then that sound is better than the sound of a pop filter on the mic.
Yeah, that was the other thing you taught me. So pop filters on the mic affect frequency.
Screw up the mid-range.
Right. So the trick is to, like we were discussing on an SM57, which is a great mic.
Yeah.
I actually like the sound of SM57s.
Well, the trick, I mean, each person's mouth is going to be different, but what you do is you just hold your hand up and go pop, 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 and move your hand around until you feel where there's no breath.
Right, like,
and that's where to put the
and
mic.
that's where you put the mic.
Yeah.
So, and that's how you don't need a pop filter, and you still get the quality of your voice.
Yeah.
A buddy of mine was at the Bob Dylan show. Dylan sings off axis on an SM58 all night. He actually knows what he's doing, So you'll get the better frequency response, and then just deal with the pops if there are any later.
Yeah. Well, you can do that. The other thing you can do is you can wave your hand in front.
Well, when you hit the P's,
Yeah.
like person, oh yeah, that could work too.
And that works for sibilants also.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
It's old radio
Yeah.
drama. See, I took radio drama from the 7th through the 12th grade.
And they taught you all this stuff.
Yeah.
Wow.
And we had these two women from NBC, one teaching in the junior high and one in the senior high. They've both been produced at NBC, and they talked the school into putting in little studios to teach a radio drama class. They were both hired to teach drama, but they were among the many women who got fired from NBC when the men came back from World War II.
Oh, no kidding.
That's why it's also male dominated. The the government offered a tax credit for hiring veterans.
Gotcha.
I mean, not even a tax deduction, a tax credit.
Wow.
And so whole lot of women in all kinds of fields got fired and replaced with veterans because it was cheaper.
Interesting.
And that happened at NBC, and both of these women had been producers. They'd been producers before the war. I mean, it isn't like they were women replacing the men.
Right. This was their chosen profession.
This was their chosen profession.
Wow.
And a whole lot of radio was invented by a woman, a lady named Judith Waller in Chicago, where advertising was invented.
Mm-hmm.
And she, the editor of a newspaper, had learned about her. She was working at an ad agency in Chicago at first, when she first graduated from high school. And she was writing ad copy. And so he would bring her in to write copy for the paper when they had a need for it. They developed a relationship. And then she went to New York and one of the big Madison Avenue agencies for a few years. And then she came back to Chicago and couldn't get a job. And he wound up hiring her to manage the radio station they'd just built in something like 1924.
Wow.
And basically she was handed this radio station, here, do something.
And she made it into...
And so she's the one who worked out a deal for the Chicago Cubs to do...
No shit.
Almost no other team in the country was willing to have themselves be on the radio because they figured if it was on the radio, nobody's going to come to the game.
And actually, it made it much.
And so she got that going. She got Amos and Andy they'd started their routine at another station, and they couldn't get a syndication deal. That station wouldn't let them do a syndication deal, so she hired them, and they changed the name of the show to Amos and Andy, and they had a syndication deal that they wanted. And in the process, they basically invented the situation comedy.
Amazing. Well, it's nice that today women are starting to get more power again in the audio industry, because it's been ridiculous. I mean, look at the two. Who are the three biggest stars? Adele, Billie Eilish, Taylor Swift, right? I mean, seriously, like the guys, I mean, there are some good ones, but they're kind of all lumped in. And all three of those women have a unique sound and are selling tons of records.
Yeah.
And there's a few others I'm not mentioning, but those are...
And like all women, they're overqualified for the job they're doing. They'd be presidents of corporations if they were men.
Be much better off.